SharePoint Hub Site gives you the capability to build logical associations between your other sites that you have. Everything in modern SharePoint is now a site collection. So they've really flattened out the architecture of all of your sites going forward. But that means that you have more flexibility to basically be able to adjust navigation and drive the relationships between those sites. So really the whole concept of a sub-site has really kind of taken a back seat. So with modern SharePoint, you really need to understand that there's really kind of two types of sites, and one's a communication site and the other is your team sites for collaboration. Your communication sites is what's required for a hub site. So it has to be a communication site first before you can make it a hub site. But once you have that set up, you have your hub site and it creates the association between, from that point, you have other sites that can join your hub. And when a site joins the hub, it picks up certain aspects from the hub. So things like theming, branding, search, navigation, all get basically pushed down from the hub so that you have consistent navigation across those. And it allows you to create those relationships. So in the screenshot here, you have HR, that's your hub site. So here you have your HR that has a series of child sites essentially associated with it, as well as sales and EMEA. The hub site is going to be the site that's going to push down that other information like the consistent search, branding, and navigation across of those, and helps you build that architecture across your company. Now, there's a couple things you need to know too about hub sites. Is there's a hard limit of 2,000 hub sites in a company. So for smaller companies, that's never going to be a problem. But in a large company with multinational and affiliates all over the world, you could run into that very quickly in a period of a year or two with hub sites if you just kind of let it grow. So you're going to want to manage the hub sites and all that you have. But that's the hub site. The other concept is a home site. And a home site is your default, your base intranet. So your root site at the top. So, company.intranet.com, or in this case, company.sharepoint.com, basically becomes your intranet. And that is your home site. And a home site is required for, so this is a look at a home site inside of SharePoint. And, it's your top level site. And it gives you a couple pieces of additional functionality that you're going to want to be aware of. And one of them is the app bar, is something that is now being pushed down to all of the tenants so that you get that navigation on the left-hand side there that gets you to your root site. It gets you to other SharePoint resources. It gets you to, recommended content. And we're going to show all of this, but that app bar and the global navigation that's also part of the hub site or home site is something that's required in order to get started using Viva. So I wanted to just kind of touch on that. I mentioned the communication sites and all already. So with that, as a background, I want to jump into Viva. So our guest speaker today, I've known Michael quite a long time, but Michael has been with Microsoft for, I'll just say, I remember back a long time ago working with Michael. So, but Michael is a technical specialist in probably everything Microsoft, and I just want to welcome him and thank him for joining us today for this overview of Microsoft Viva. So, Michael.
So again, my name is Mike Chinati. As Russ mentioned, I've been around at Microsoft probably forever, actually just over 20 years. And I'm going to be talking about reimagining the corporate intranet using Microsoft Viva. And so we're going to kind of walk through what Viva is, so we have an understanding of, the overall landscape of Viva. And certainly, let's keep this interactive, open to questions. And also, one last thing, you can find myself and my colleagues. I'm a principal technologist for Microsoft's Healthcare and Life Sciences group, but you can find myself and all my colleagues on our blog at aka.ms/HLS blog. And we're getting ready to do a whole bunch of Viva posts, particularly around Intranet, starting up later this week. So, later this week, it's almost the end of the week. So, beginning of next week. So, be sure to check us out over there. Lots of content. And we also do a live podcast that we've just kicked off, starting on Mondays. But I'm going to go ahead and let's jump on in. And real quickly, the first slide here, I do have a couple of setup slides, but the first one here is just to kind of emphasize that going back, a little over a year, we saw a big impetus for people to work remote, right? Where with COVID and everything happening, many organizations, including my own, started having, where possible, obviously with frontline workers, we couldn't do that, but with IT, other folks that could, having them remote work from home. And as a part of that, it exasperated some of the difficulty where you have a disparate workforce. And by that, I mean, you had people not connecting with each other, became a much more challenging environment. And during that time, there's been some research and things going on. And what we found is that for organizations that, number one, wanted to keep a worker populace that was engaged and happy, actual engagement with the organization was a huge factor in their job satisfaction. And number two, and this is big because there's actually new data just came out recently that we've published out there. We've seen that with this remote work, a lot of folks, if they're not happy and don't feel part of the org, are leaving because they can work from any orgs from anywhere. Like I work here in the Raleigh, North Carolina area, but I cover customers all up and down the Eastern Coast, and some of those have, branches overseas, and I'm working with them daily. So this idea about keeping employees engaged so that we can retain those employees becomes really a big deal. And I meet pretty frequently with C-level executives at different organizations who that's one of their concerns is keeping those top-notch people. So along those lines, 6 things that we've been uncovering that are really lead to that sense of being engaged at within an organization. Number one is empowerment. Do I have the tools and things I need to do to get my job done on a daily basis? Or do I have to go all over the place to find them? Do I have to have a million tabs open? Is it easy? And can I get to what I need? Number 2 is growth. Is an organization investing in me and my personal growth within the org, my professional aspirations? Are they assisting that, or is it a mess within that? The third one, a sense of purpose, is where I start to feel like, hey, I'm a part of something bigger than just my putting in hours. I don't know about you, but I used to be a dishwasher for a while in high school. My sense of purpose was I punched a time card, cha-ching, I sweat and joked around with people, and I couldn't wait for my hours to finish and go cha-ching again and exit. So somebody's has, if you want to mute I think it's Russ, it might be you. But having a sense of purpose beyond that, and that really gets into communicating corporate culture and values and other things, that's a big area. A huge area, we're all in a Teams meeting right now. And as people went remote, what we have seen is that because people were not having to pull together meetings in conference rooms and really were being forced into this virtual world in many instances, that the idea of rack and stack of meetings all day became a real reality for a lot of folks. And I can tell you for myself, that is oftentimes the case. But we have within our jobs a lot of different things. We're on cross team projects, etc. So how can I kind of clear the noise and get, time to focus on the things I need to do to actually get my job done? Because the pressures on that have increased, not decreased. The last two real quickly are kind of related. Am I making connections with others within my org? And is the organization proactively looking after my well-being in this disconnected environment? So those are 6 things that when we think about a great intranet experience that we have seen that have been real pressures. And so with that in mind, Microsoft set about, and we didn't want to make necessarily new tools. Everybody's got a lot of tools out there. And this is, a graphic that kind of really brings that to bear. Number one, there's lots of tools around communications, resources, insights. And at your organizations, you probably have them from us. You have them from other companies, including competitors of ours. And you might have homegrown ones that fit in these categories. So what we decided to do was, first of all, for our own employees, but also for our customers, was to build what we're calling an intranet experience platform. In other words, bringing all those things together into a simplified experience for employees so that we can improve that sense of engagement and the things that we just talked about. And that goes back to this, and then we're going to jump into them. The Microsoft Viva platform today, as it stands, covers 4 modules. We're going to kind of walk through them, but focus mainly on the first one, which is which is Viva Connections. Viva Connections is all about this next generation intranet. But as we get into connections and everything, there's 2 things I just want you to take away from this slide. And I'll give this deck to Russ. I've got it in a PDF format so you can keep everything. But the first is everything that you've been doing around compliance and security, it carries through. While we're building new experiences into these tools, both ours and others, we're not introducing anything new. So anything that you've set up around data loss protection, retention policies, security, identity access, all that carries through. And the last thing is that this is meant to be an extensible platform that you can customize as well as third parties can. And I'll talk about that as we get into that because a lot of that's coming out in build later this month. So for the first piece that we're going to hit, it's really about this next generation intranet that we're calling connections. And there's a couple of basic premises that Microsoft has made around connections as we're delivering it. The first is that in order for an experience to be engaging, it has to be interactive. It has to be where you are. So if you're at home or on the road on your phone, it needs to be there. If you're on a tablet, it needs to be there. Mac PC, it shouldn't matter. Browser, it should not matter. But furthermore, it needs to be highly tailored for you based upon who you are in your org so that not only is information, corporate culture, events being tailored and delivered to you based upon who you are, but also the applications you need to get your job done, including not only ours, but many third party that you may or may not have. And I'll highlight some of that as we go through. So the way that we bring that to bear is through where people work. We've been talking about Microsoft Teams as the single pane of glass where people work for quite a while. And so with the Viva Connections piece, we're bringing it directly here into, you can see here we have a branded experience coming directly into Microsoft Teams. And it's not simply, a lot of folks have taken intranet, SharePoint sites, web pages, dumped them in with an icon, but you lose a lot of the fidelity of that experience when you have done that in the past. You don't with the new connections piece. But we're also bringing some new components to connections, namely two that are releasing with the mobile view that will come out in the summer. But I'm going to show you that as well. The first of which is this new updated company feed. We've had news, which allowed for audience profile targeting, but you'll see when we get into mobile, we're going to be able to pull a very clean view of this new web part, because the mobile Teams client is going to understand that web part as a discrete source of information. So it's going to do all the stuff with responsive design that you would expect, auto laying it out. It's going to provide for audience profiling, so you can target users based upon their role in an org and give them different views of that information. But it's going to be able to pull very cleanly, and we'll see that in just a moment. The other component that I'm really excited about is dashboard. And the dashboard introduces this new concept. The dashboard is a new web part for SharePoint, modern framework, and that's, I think, why Russ talked about modern framework. All of this is based off of that. But when you enable connections, you're going to get this new web part in the summer. It'll roll out. It's called Dashboard. And what Dashboard will allow you to do is add individual tiles to that dashboard. And those tiles can be targeted so that different people, and you'll see as we go through, different people will see different tiles for their dashboard. You can alter their visibility, like are they large, are they small, do they have images, etc. And the best news on this is if you've been doing any development in Teams around doing some of the cards, adaptive cards that you can drop into Teams, and working with that and working with Power BI, with Power Apps, with Power Automate to create those views, you can create your own custom ones very quickly and very simply and just publish them. Some of them you'll be able to actually just republish. But the beauty of it is we're going to offer 3 types of cards. Number 1 is no code, out of the box cards from us and from third parties. So if you have different third party companies that you work with, the exhaustive list will come out. I know many that are going to be released. I'm afraid to say names right now because under NDA, when I'm talking direct to customers, I say a whole bunch. I'll just tell you many of them that you would expect and that you've probably been asking for are going to be here. But you'll have third-party cards that if you have that service, you can drop it in. If you have any of them, if you have the 365 services, you'll get out-of-the-box ones like tasks, and for all of our services that'll allow you to drop it in. Again, you can target or not target. And not only will all this show up here in Teams on the client, but again, it's made to be mobile. So here we see now we're pulling in that feed. Remember I said in the Teams client, I'm just going to Teams. That's all I need to know. Yes, I can go to a SharePoint homepage. Yes, it's responsive design. But I don't have to go anyplace separate. All I have to do is fire up Teams. And there is my intranet on the desktop and on mobile. And I'm on something called Canary build. So I'm actually running the summer release part of that. So I have all of it, dashboard and everything, running on my phone. And I can tell you, it's really a game changer because it's bringing the communications tailored to you. And again, it's here in the Teams client, but you'll see as this scrolls through that we have interactivity. We're dropping in views to Yammer. We're even dropping Teams conversations in here. And everything that we do has full interactivity. So, for example, Yammer is a big part of this. Yammer communities, integrating those into the homepage. And that will bring all the fidelity and interaction. I don't have to go out to Yammer. I don't even have to go to the web page. I just have to open Teams. And those pieces that corporate is pushing or tailoring within that feed are going to show up for me. So different communities can pop in that feed for different groups, right? Based upon your role. So we have that, all that kind of information feeding here. And this is just going to kind of scroll through and show you the fidelity of the view through that and all the interactive pieces. But then the next piece comes out is, again, that application dashboard. And this is, for me, where it gets really exciting. A lot of people have been trying to push a whole range of applications into Teams. And then they're trying to, well, we're clogging up the left hand. I'm adding stuff as tabs. This provides a much better experience for your users where, again, I can drop the applications in as tiles into the dashboard. I can tailor that view, and you'll see that in one moment. But then I can drop all kinds of views again so people can just go to one-stop shop. So here again, I'm seeing this one, for example, this COVID checker, which I have on my phone. We developed with a customer using Power Apps and Power Automate. And it's actually for that return to work scenario where people were returning to buildings before they could get building access. They have to go through this. So that's an example of a low code, what we call low code. We also support full code in Visual Studio. But then again, you know, out of the box, we have tasks. Yammer conversations. I can click right here and ask a question of leadership and get a response. And I never had to go anywhere else. And then we're showing some third-party ones going to HR systems. It could be SAP or Salesforce, whatever it is you have. Here we have views into some other ones. For example, like the Insights module that's showing me now some pieces. It's saying, hey, you know, it looks and it says, you've been a rat, you know, like a hamster on a wheel running. You need a break. Take a break. I see a learning module that's been assigned to me coming from the learning piece in Viva, and I see additional ones. And again, it's whether I'm on the desktop, whether I'm in the mobile, but more importantly, as we look at all these things, it's one dashboard, but many views. So here I have this knowledge worker, but over here is a frontline worker. Exact same dashboard. They're both in Teams, except now this person has a very discrete view based upon their role and what they need. They don't need to do COVID check for building access. They need a daily health check. So that, because they've been going in. In my case, I work with healthcare. So I have clinicians and folks that have been, they never were remote, right? They've been on site the whole time, but they needed to do daily checks. And so being able to provide that right in here. We have here, I need to clock in. That could be shifts, it could be chronos, but it's a different function, right? Because as a frontline worker, they're clocking in for a given shift and they're tracking that. And there's all this kind of information taking place. And again, the idea is any device, anywhere, anytime access, all brought in through Teams, highly tailored and personalized based upon my role in the org. Connections is available today. I'm going to show you what you can get today. Today, we don't yet have the dashboard or the new feed, but you still have audience profile targeting, the mega menu, and all those things. So, for example, if I come in here, here you can see I've got, this is out in a demo tenant. Here I have a corporate intranet published with modern design where I can do things like have the mega menu and find it, and you know, I can have tailored information, personalized information for people. I can have different corporate information and Yammer integration and all that good stuff built in it. But again, I have to go to this page. Well, when I enable connections, and I will say, please excuse me with this, I just enabled this in this demo tenant connections this morning. So there's a little bit of time before I just pinned it directly in here. In order for me to add it in the apps view in the upper corner, I have to wait a few hours. So I was doing this for something else, but I thought I'd quick show it. So here it is though in Teams, and I'm in the web. I'm not even in the thick client. I'm in the thick client here with you. So I'm in a web view. It's still rendering, right? I could be on, I don't know, I could be in Chrome on top of a Linux box. And here I am. I've got this, again, full fidelity view where I can get to all the things that I would expect right within that corporate intranet, right? So I've got, here we go, it's rendering up some pieces coming out of Yammer. I've got my information. I've even got within here information coming out of, what do we call it? Been a long day already. Twitter with the little bird. So I have social information, but then again, I have full fidelity navigation. So if I wanted to come in, things that I'm doing in Modern Framework and SharePoint, like, oh, I don't know, I need to take virtual tours, right? So we know we can build those out easily. And so here we go. And it should start talking. And I forgot, I thought I turned the audio on, but I didn't. But here you can see I have virtual tours set up in SharePoint using SharePoint Spaces. And everything is working within that single unified wrapper of Teams. Again, so if I need to get to stuff, I can quickly and easily do so. I don't need to go someplace separate for all of this. I can bring that full fidelity company intranet experience with all the new, bells and whistles of SharePoint Modern Framework, personalized audience profile delivery right here. Oh, there we go. So I can do all of that, one-stop shop. I never had to leave Teams. And that means for my employees, I can get them the information, the applications, the tools they need, one-stop shop. And that's it. So before I move on, any questions? Anybody?
There is one question in there, Mike. I heard that an accordion layout for quick links was coming. Any information?
I do not. No. An accordion layout. I have seen some information. To be honest, I haven't paid close attention to it. I'm a Teams TS. I'm SharePoint from 20 years, from way back, but I'm just now getting back in. Great question. So, Mark, when is all this available and is there a fee? That is an awesome question. So, number one, you can do what I've just showed you, putting your company intranet, right, with the full fidelity experience, all of that, even the universal menu. And again, I apologize, it's down low. Later tonight it'll be up, but having all that right here, right? You can do that today. If you go out to that blog I mentioned, aka.ms/HLS blog, and scroll down, I had a post like 2 weeks ago where I posted the directions to it. I actually used my directions this morning to get this up and running. So you can do that today, even with SharePoint List too. Yes. Number two, the cost. This is the great thing, and I love about this. If you own SharePoint Online and you own Teams, you own connections. You own it. The company feed, where does that come from? By Aaron. Great question. Well, it can come directly by publishing news stories, just like with News Today. You can publish directly in. In fact, let me just quick show that. We'll click Edit. So it'll work very similar, but again, it's because of the nature of that particular part, it will get recognized by the mobile view. That's the big difference there, and be able to pull it discreetly. So with news, did I have news? I thought I had direct news here. Come on. Everything's slowing down on my computer here. My news, see all news. Oh, here we go. News. So with the news, when you're, grab the piece here and the same piece, this will show here. It'll be the same concept. As soon as that comes up, there we go. So news, where does it come from? Well, number one, you can publish directly into that news from this site, but you can also select additional sites for roll-up. We used a graph to pull all this information. So let's say I click select sites, boom. I can start selecting individual ones to go ahead and pick and cherry picking. If I have my site, as Russ mentioned, Russ, can you mute? If I do it as a hub site, then, and I'm doing roll-ups, I can have auto roll-up. But again, the beauty of it is I can have news feeding from multiple sites up to here. But if there's security, oh, thank you. Somebody put it, Joseph, thank you very much. If you have access right controls and those various sites, we're still going to respect all that. We security trim all of this so you can roll that up. But then you can also, for any of this, enable audience targeting. So now I can say, here's a story. Is it all company or am I going to target it? And I can target based on either an Office 365 group. If you set up a team, you got a group. I can do it based off of that, or I can do it on Azure AD groups, security groups. So I have two basic constructs to do that. That'll allow me to go ahead and I can pull the news from all over, so I'm not incumbent on publishing there. Can you type out the blog? Oh, somebody pulled it. So, okay, that was the other question. So, I mean, to me, this rocks. This is today. You can do this today with news, right? And you can change the layout. You can select the order when you select a bunch of these ones, the hierarchy of them. But you've got all kinds of options today in SharePoint Modern Framework. And the last thing I'll say is this. If your company is in Classic still, you don't have to re-platform the whole kit and caboodle. You could go out today, create, what I did here was I stood up this new site. I actually went to, and I will type this in because I had a colleague who didn't know about this and I was like, what? lookbook.microsoft.com, and you can stand up using one of the templated sites that are there. We have all kinds of pre-populated solution sites. You can stand one up. You can go ahead and change the stuff out, and then you go into the SharePoint admin, make that the new default page. Then there's an option, and again, it's in those directions that Joseph, thank you, Joseph, again, he put in there. You're going to go in, you're going to then target it as what's called a home site. There's a script you run. You can turn on the mega menu, the universal menu, gives you that richer navigational schema. And then you have one final piece that you run to create a package that you upload to Teams and then drop it on the left for connections. It makes a connections package that will give all the full fidelity. You will have to wait a few hours before you can drop it universally on the left side, which is what I found out this morning. But once you've done that, you can have it populated in the upper left like the slides that I was showing. So it's great stuff. You own it. Teams, SharePoint Online, Modern Framework. Stand up the home page. Just get the home page running. Start doing news there. That's stupid simple to do. And then iteratively go through. It may, you may have to fire links off and open in a separate browser, but you can get your basic news and things there. Somebody asked, will access to third-party apps in the dashboard open in Teams or a separate web page? So that's a great question. The apps themselves, they're designed to be able to have, based upon the different views, little pop-ups that people can actually interact with, and then you can blow out to a separate web page. So the basic interactivity that you're going to explore, some of it, and it depends on the third party, right, who's writing this. So they're using full code to do that. But for example, that one that I had mentioned earlier that I highlighted in the dashboard where it said there was the COVID checker, which was done using Power Apps. It just gives you a little pop-up right there in place. and you go through, you answer a series of questions, and then boom, it shoots that through with Power Automate to then provide building access. So it depends. The ones we're going to do for the most part, we want to provide right there and open you in place. It'll depend on that third party, or you can create your own. We have publicly announced this, so I'm not saying anything. I hope I'm not saying anything that'll get me in trouble. At the Build conference, we are releasing the APIs to all this month. So Build is where you can expect to see that, and the exhaustive list of third party that's already built on Viva platform. That's all coming. And then with the APIs, then basically anybody can go out and build the full code. How am I doing for timing, Russ? Am I okay to keep going or not? I forget what our time is on this.
Yeah, I mean, keep going.
All right. So are there any last questions on connections before I move on? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay. So let's go ahead, because the next one gets me really pumped. So Viva Topics. I love Viva Topics. So Viva Topics builds on this idea of intranet and really bringing information to people. Viva Topics is this. If you're familiar with Project Cortex, this is the realization of Project Cortex. What Viva Topics does is Viva Topics says, look, the graph has all this info about everything that's going on. Like, you're in a meeting right now. Guess what? Every one of you is in a graph. I guess, Russ, you set this up. So you're in Russ' in his tenant's graph right now, right? You were invited, you accepted this, and then you attended. It's going to show how long you were here. All that's in the graph, all that information. The questions that are here are in the graph. Everything in SharePoint is in the graph. Yammer's in the graph. All this info and third party, where you set up third party connectors to the graph, they're there as well, that data and information. And what happens is in topics, when you turn topics on, the AI runs across the graph and it looks for recurring themes. On the front end, it creates a SharePoint site when you enable it, called Topics. You can name it whatever you want. We have an internal one already for us at Microsoft. We have it. I have a page that got lit up. But it creates this thing called Topics, as it creates topics, it actually creates a SharePoint page, a topics page. And it does some basic things. Number one, it looks for related people to that topic, and it drops them on suggested people. It looks for related content that can be web pages, documents, etc., data that's out there, and it drops that in. It also is going to drop in our instance, we have it doing related sites. And then finally, there's related topics. And what we do then is, it's one thing to say, look, all this data is there. It can be approved and made available to people. And sure, people can search for it or navigate. But the real power of knowledge management is bringing knowledge to people where they're working. So in this case, with Viva Topics, what we do is we strive to bring it to you. So today, for example, when you enable Viva Topics and you turn it loose in your org, as people are they're having conversations or typing the words. In this case, we see here an example of some women who are having a conversation around this big project called SOAR in their at their organization. And when they type the word SOAR, and you'll see it's underlined, and if you mouse over it, they're going to get a topics page card that gives them a brief. I went in and edited. I added videos. I pinned people. I added some additional metric content, some analytics. You can do all that because it's still just a SharePoint page. But the bulk of the work was handled by AI, not people, which is why nobody does this today. It's handled by AI, and then the AI continues to suggest updates as it goes. So it's a beautiful thing. It also is going to give you a home view, right? So I can come back, I can click, and then this kind of, you'll see it looks a lot like Delve. So we got this kind of V2 of Delve where I have proactive suggested content. And then finally, there's a managed view. So if you are managing areas of it, like I am internally, I have my own for HLS blog. The system recognized I've got a bunch of documentation. It generated a page. I'm managing that page. I can do it right from here. I don't have to go someplace separate, and then I can see metrics and analytics around that. So Topics is available today. It is a paid licensing. However, if you want to turn it on and do a trial of that, you can set up and get trial licenses to turn it loose on your company. I will tell you, if you want to trial it, don't do it in a test tenant. You can do connections in a test tenant and get a great experience, but you really need that wealth of documentation and information in the graph for it to light things up. Use the trial licenses in your prod tenant. Nobody will see that except the people you give the trials to. And I think it gives a max of like 25. Do that there because it'll see all that wealth of data in your corporate environment, which is going to actually enable you to see it a whole lot better than it would otherwise, right? So that, in this case, again, that's topics, lighting up all that kind of corporate information. Questions on topics before I move on? These last two will go rather quickly. Everybody's quiet.
Yeah, I don't see any questions in there, Mike. Any additional questions?
Any additional? Yeah, I don't. If you have additional ones, please shoot them. You can continue to pop them up. I'm going to go ahead and move on for the sake of time. Assuming, yeah. So Dan, that's a yes, absolutely. Remember, what did I say that one slide? I said the two things on it. The only two things I cared about. One was we're respecting all the security and compliance you've already put into place. So when we talk about security access trimming, the views of that content, that carries through. The graph has the Accels indexed along with everything else. So of course, yeah, absolutely, we're going to do that. Next is skilling and growth. It's called learning. Good to see knowledge management getting some love. Yes. How do you prioritize topics? So Rachel, I think you're missing the point. You can prioritize if you want to start creating a hierarchy, think of it this way. Today, think of it creating, I call it Wikipedia on steroids, generated initially by AI, right? As it runs across all of that. But what we're doing is, as you are conversing, yes, you can go search for it. And there's things we can do with SharePoint's search interface for Microsoft Search and pulling just that data from that site, etc. But if your permissions are cleaned up, well, that goes without saying. Head in the sand is no way to run a business, right? We want to make sure we've done those things. But as far as how we're bubbling it up, we're doing it based upon you discussing the topic. When you type that topic that's the same as that topic page or associated terms, and that was one of the pieces that showed. So like in mine for HLS blog, I added some related terms and phrases. So if people typed them in Teams or Search or wherever they're at, it would also underline them. That's how you do that, right? So it's directly bringing it to them where they're at based upon and helping them discover that information without having to go searching and navigating through. They still can do that. It's still a site. You still can build content. It's a SharePoint site that gets set up. So that's up to you. All right. I'm going to go ahead and move on. Skilling and growth. So first thing I want to say here in Viva Learning, we're not replacing your LMS. We're not replacing third-party repositories like ChorusWorks, Pluralsoft, and others that you've purchased. We're not replacing Microsoft Learn and all the stuff that we give for free. We're not replacing anything. What we are doing is this. In every organization, there's a continuum of learning that takes place, from departmental documents that are assigned to you for a project to go through and understand, all the way up to, corporate compliance with legal pieces that are around that need to be completed through an LMS system for reporting for legal purposes. What Viva Learning does is corral all that into a single unified interface for your users, looking at 3 primary views. The first of which is assigned to you. In this one spot, instead of me going out into my intranet and looking for this and links to all these different things that I got to go to, I come here, again, single pane of glass, Teams, to get my work done, and we're going to bring it to you. So you're going to see all the learning assigned to you as an individual from wherever it resides. It could be a YouTube video. It can be your corporate LMS. It could be a LinkedIn learning module, whatever the case is. We're going to provide that. Secondly, recommended based upon your role. Remember, audience targeting is a huge emphasis for us. So based on your role in the org, being able to target specific learning by audiences, so that'll come up in their recommended, right? And then finally, all learning made available to me. So if I click this, it's going to quick run through and show, we saw edX, LinkedIn Learning, Microsoft Learn, ChorusWorks, Plurals, Skillsoft. It's a whole range of them. These are some of the actual companies that we already have integration with. Again, at Build, we're going to announce many more. But it becomes that one-stop shop. And then as a user, I simply come in and say, hey, I want to see this particular learning module. I click, I can see in it, I can see who it was assigned by, when it's due, my status. By the way, they can see my status, related ones. And then I can say, you know what, I want to go ahead and start this, fire it up, and go ahead and complete my learning right from a one-stop shop. I didn't have to go, if it was a Word doc, as simple as that, I'd see that there, I can discuss it. But then again, the beauty is how you set this up. So there are some pieces on the back end where you'll register those components, like your LMS, third-party learning solutions you've purchased, or packages, ones that are freely available like edX and others. But once they're available, you're simply going to come in to an interface right within Teams if you have been delegated the ability to set this up. So anywhere from like managers at a department level all the way on up. So licensing, they have not publicly stated, I know, I can't tell you. I don't think. I'm not sure if I'm able to or not. I know at Build you'll be able to say it. I'll just say it depends on what you own as far as other components, right? Not necessarily the learning interface. So, so from this standpoint, I can come in, I can add, so they're creating a SOAR learning module. No, it's not. I'll just say that, and then I'm going to shut up. No. So SOAR learning module that's here, it has more to do with connectors for other companies. And then I'm probably said too much. There might be somebody from Microsoft on here right now. I'm about to get in trouble. So yeah, there's hooks into LinkedIn Learning. Yep, that one is fairly obvious here. So if you own LinkedIn Learning, the hook for it, you already bought it. It's there. Now I've really said too much. So I'm going to keep moving before I get into trouble here. And so SOAR Learning, they're creating this learning piece. And you can see they're pulling stuff from an LMS system, LinkedIn Learning, a PowerPoint. You can combine all this. And again, delegated ability to be able to do so all the way up to your people who are doing the LMS. And here you can see real simple. They're assigning to one person. You'd probably assign to groups of people. But then once that's done, you can then check the status on that right from here. We are not replacing your LMS reporting features. That is done for legal compliance. So please understand that. This is more from a managerial standpoint to get those quick looks at where people stand in their status and to send the nasty grams out via email or Teams chats to people. Hey, you need to get on this. So that's all available. Russ asked a great question. Integration with learning pathways. It's actually going to take some of those pieces from learning pathways where we're pulling stuff out, and you'll be able to pull that in here for a more seamless view. So think of learning pathways as kind of a V1. Can we get a link to the recording to share with others? You'll have to ask Russ that. Talk to your Microsoft rep. I show this stuff all the time. So they click, they say they're done, and here you go. That's it. The learning again is all about aggregating, bringing it all together in one view, and that is being released in the summer time frame. It's in private preview now. Public preview is coming this month, so stay tuned. All right, next, Viva Insights. Viva Insights is the last module I'm going to go through real quickly. If you know all about my analytics and workplace analytics, I'm not telling you anything new here, just showing you new views and how we're developing on those views to create a much richer experience within teams. And this one I can tell you is licensed that way. So for example, if you have E3 and above, you own my analytics. And if you've deployed that, you can deploy my insights. So you can get this view right here, and you can customize this view where you can go in and you can let AI start to suggest for people how to focus and plan their time, right? Instead of fumbling with a calendar, I need to push stuff away. That was already asked. I cannot tell you the answer to that. That's all I can say. So I'm going to keep my mouth quiet there. So again, if you have E3 and above, my analytics, my insights, you own this. You can deploy this, push this out to your folks, but you can do things like plan time. You can find coaching time. We're providing additional things like, again, views into other stuff. So this is providing, hey, you have a module that's due from learning, that learning piece. We're going to bubble it up right here, and then I can click book learning time, and based upon the time here in the module, it understands that. It can suggest times automatically for me instead of me fumbling with my calendar to go ahead and block out. So a lot that we can do here. We have other things like virtual commutes, and you can edit these, give your mind a break. But the real power for this really starts to, and again, it's available. We're going to have this for mobile. The big view is what you get in workplace analytics, but that we're moving here. So again, the same concept. You license workplace analytics for certain executives, for different people within management in your organization. This is where the real power comes into play. So for example, here, prevent employee burnout. This is a manager view. It's important to note that while the manager is getting roll-ups, we anonymize so they can't drill into any individual, and you have to have at least 9 people on a team. At least 9 people. If you want to ratchet it up higher, you can. So I have an org, for example, who has a large presence in Germany where they mandate 16 people on a team. They've ratcheted it up. And you can do that. So, but we won't let you go down below 9. You have to have at least 9 in your reports to effectively anonymize that data. Then once you see it, you're going to be able to drill in and get views where you say, hey, look, I can see my team and similar teams across my organization. And, they're working after hours on average 5 hours a week, but my team's on average 10 hours a week. Yes, you use your own LMS. You can use your own LMS. We're not requiring you to have to have any specific, or we're not doing one. So yes. But I can see here my team's working much more after hours. That leads to burnout. We know that. Even in the case, I had a head of clinicians at a hospital say, "Oh, you don't understand. My people don't have time to look at all." And during the day, they're not in 365 stuff. They're in Epic all day. And, they're in that particular system. And they're doing all that stuff. And I said, yeah, but what are they doing when they go home? They're catching up on email. They're in chat messages. They are working after hours. And in fact, because they're in all this stuff and running around, they're spending a lot of time. So what this enables managers to do is to start to take action. This doesn't give a real robust view, but just as an example, in my own org, my manager and his colleague, who has another direct report group, the solution sales specialist, they could see that we were like hamsters on a wheel. Sometimes I'm doing 6 or more presentations a day, plus all the work I have to do, builds I have to do, POCs I'm working on with customers. And they said, our folks need time out from the business to be able to take a breath, think a little strategically, and to connect with each other. So I kid you not, they scheduled a book reading, Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. We went through this book. 1 hour each week was blocked and was held sacred. You could refuse any meeting that somebody tried to book them. Yeah, but you're just going to be talking about the book. Empowered by management, because they were like, look, our folks are spending all this time. We want to take a time out to breathe, think a little more strategically, learn how to work together and speak a common language around, tackling difficult situations, etc. And we did that for a month and a half to work through it. And it was a great exercise. They also set up monthly happy hours where we get together for 1 hour at the end of a business day, and you can bring your coffee, you can bring your water, you can bring scotch, which sometimes I do, you can bring a beer, which sometimes I do, a glass of wine. We don't care. And the grounds for that is no work talk. It's all just connecting with our colleagues, right? So it's shop talk. It's just like a happy hour. We're all in teams. Everybody has video on. We're all communicating, sharing, and reconnecting, even though we're physically not in proximity. So that's important stuff. Organizationally, it's also important. So here you can see some of the views drilling down into organizational metrics, where executives, your C-level folks, your VPs can start to say, hey, we need to take some proactive measures around that. Microsoft this year, based upon where they saw with the remote work, us actually working much more. I don't break for lunches anymore. I'm eating here at my lunch while I'm working and doing things, right? Because I don't have time. So what they did, they gave us 5 extra vacation days for the year, every employee, based upon what they saw organizationally happening. Why? Because going back to that earlier premise about employee well-being and connection and all that stuff, not only connecting with us, but our families and others, that's huge. And as people feel the organization is invested in them, they feel engaged, they feel more of a sense of loyalty than they would otherwise. Otherwise, there's just burnout. So My Analytics, you're going to get My Insights if you have My Analytics. If you have Workplace Analytics, you'll get that Workplace Insights available. There will be much more. If you have not registered for the Microsoft Build Conference, all the sessions are going to be online for free. You can register today. You can see them on demand. You can sign up and set up your own schedule, and then you can go at your will later on, as you have time to see those. But there is a wealth of them happening around Viva. Viva is our employee experience, bringing the intranet to the whole new phase and inside of teams where people work. So no matter if I'm here, wherever I can get to it and get to that information. That's what I got. Got a couple of questions. Third parties, yeah. So you're going to see some of those third parties. LinkedIn, I can tell you definitively. There's many there's a number of those LMSs. And you were asking about charges. You'll hear about that at Build. How will My Analytics, Workplace Analytics move into Viva Insights? Oh, so it actually moves here into the side. Like I have it in my teams today. I have a little icon that says Insights. I click on it and I can block time. I can see information. My manager can see information. So that's there. So is learning in mine. And then the whole insights piece, the topics also, we're bringing it all into Teams, right? So a lot of this you can get to via the web, but we want to make Teams the single pane of glass to get your work done. Will Microsoft offer Viva certification for those interested? I hope so. I don't know. I'm a field resource. I'm not on the product group, but I would hope so, but we'll see. I do know this is only the beginning. There's a whole V2 of much of this coming in the summer time frame, and more announcements over the next 6 months that I've had privy to I can't talk about, but there is a lot more coming. This is just beginning how we're starting. Any other questions about anything I've mentioned? Yes, I see Barbara. Barbara has her hand raised.
Yeah, so Barbara's asking, can external parties participate or access our Viva tools as guest users if they have a license with their respective company?
So they are going to see their Viva tools. They would have to be logged into your environment. So like as an example, I logged in and out of my Teams client today, right? And when I logged into my demo environment, I got all the things that demo environment is showing within Teams. When I went, so I guess if you're saying, can external parties, if you're providing them the ability to log in via their Teams client, like log out of their own company and log in to yours primary. Yeah, I haven't tried it as a guest user though. That would be something interesting. So I'll tell you this. So I'm going to write that down. I mentioned the blog, aka.ms/HLS blog. Where myself and a colleague of mine, Scott, we're putting together a video series, first walking you through the setup of Viva Connections, and then we're going to do build out of that subsequent piece in there. But I'm going to make sure I do a video. Oh, that's not writing. Video showing guest access, what's there and what's not.
Hey, Barbara, I took you off mute you have the capability to take yourself off of mute now. If we didn't answer your question and you want to add anything.
Well, I'm just curious because a lot of the employee handbook or employee directory tools and everything require that in Azure, you are a licensed user, and we're more of an association, federation type of organization, and we want to let our guest users who are set up in Azure access to some of these tools.
So yeah, so that's a great. So number one, I'll take a look to see when you join as a guest what that's going to look like. But number one, I can tell you this. Typically, when you're inviting a guest, you don't invite them to Teams. You invite them to a team, right? So what you need to think of in that case would be tab views within the team and tab views and channels for exposure to content. So what I just showed you with the intranet, if you have a particular site with information and different content, you can drop that today. as a tab view. I've done that for quite a while. There is a whole range of access and things that you could do, but think of it more in terms of, for guests, inviting them to either a SharePoint site or to a team, and then exposing some of that content. I don't know yet on the two web parts we mentioned. I would think the feed would work fine. The dashboard, I'm not sure. That dashboard will be a web part, so technically, if you want to drop it someplace else as well, not accessed via that home view, you can do that as well to target tiles. But you can use policies to determine who sees Viva functionality. So there's Russ speaking. So there you go. Anybody else? Any other questions? Or all right, I'm going to shut up. A Teams question. Teams meetings I've participated in have disappeared from my chat feed. I can still see older meetings, however. Do you know if this is a new feature of Teams? So, number one, Aaron, you need to, are those Teams meetings internally? And you need to talk to your org about retention policies and stuff. They might be doing something there. Because I see mine. I still have all that. So we do have the concept of retention policies, and you can set chat so, roughly 24 hours things can go out, and then out from there further. And we do have folks. There you go. Somebody, MS Teams retention policies. Yeah, we do have. There are a number of, I have orgs that have sent retention policies down to a day. Like, I don't agree with that, but that's just me. All right, Russ, I know you're ready to go. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to mute my mic.
Hopefully you should be seeing my screen at this point. So this is the Viva. This is the topic center. It's actually inside of SharePoint. And just to give you a sense of what it looks like, you have this welcome page that when any user comes to the topic center, they basically see content and topics that they've been identified either through the AI as being, or that where they may have contributed to content to that topic, and the AI capabilities recognize them as a potential expert. So, do you want to be listed on this topic or not? You have that capability to define that. But then it also displays other topics that have been confirmed that this user is a expert or a subject matter expert on these different topics. So this gives you a sense of just some of the topics that I'm actually logged in here as Megan in this demo environment. I also will reiterate and agree with what Mike said. This is a demo environment, so we have a limited amount of content in it. But I've run this in production environments already, and there's a significant amount of a wealth of information that gets surfaced up by the AI through the topics. And I just based on my own experience, I'd say probably 60% of the topics get 60 or 70% get surfaced by the AI behind this. And then there's, some topics that need to be manually entered or curated. So this is just a look at some of the topics here. But if you drill into these and, you'll see the actual topic page. And when you get in there, you'll see any documents that have been pinned, who the actual subject matter experts are associated with that, any related sites, and as well as a graph of other types of related content. And this is something that I'll show you that where these connected topics feed back into the AI, so that when they find other things that are like helicopters, they'll build that association back to the drones topic. And that is all happening through the AI. Now, if we go up to our page, and I'm gonna mention one thing here too, because I'm seeing it here. So you'll notice that the items in the navigation across the top are just, I got 4 items: the home, documents, pages, and site contents. Well, if you do some refreshes on this, there it goes. You'll see get started shows up in manage topics. So something's not right with this, that it seems to sometimes show manage topics and other times not. Anyway, manage topics is where your knowledge managers are going to go to actually curate the content. And what happens is there's like really 4 key areas in here. Anything that the AI generates and identifies as a suggested topic appears on this first screen. Now, I've already gone through these. I should have left some here to show you, but I've basically confirmed everything as a topic. So when we show under the confirm tab, you can see all of the different topics that are listed in here. And, there's quite a few, but, in a production environment, you're looking at thousands. But if you go in here, you can actually look at the topic itself and see that card that Mike showed you, how it's set up, what are the people associated with it, what are the file resources that were automatically generated. And you can see it even has the alternate name in here for, the Rusty Galbraith company is the Rusty Galbraith company. It populated that automatically. If we click on to the view details here, you can see, again, here's the suggested people and any files that are associated with them. You have the capability to pin an individual or a document. So if you're saying this is no, it's not doing it for me. You basically set in that it's a pinned document to that topic. So if we go back in here, demo environments, there it goes. See how it's disappearing and showing back up. Okay, so manage topics. If you go under here, you can basically take one of these topics and review it and publish it. So if we say review it, you can look at that topic, go through, you can make changes to it, you can pin documents. You can also edit that content and do things like if there's other, maybe this is RGC is another acronym for that company. And everyone requires a description. So that's one of the things about the AI is it doesn't always pull back a description. So before a topic can be published, it's got to have a description associated with it. So I'm just going to put in something here real quick to basically be able to save this. But now you've got your web parts that you have available throughout the rest of SharePoint. So any other content, video streams, text, anything that you want to embed, Power BI, Microsoft Forms, org charts, anything that's, any web part that's available that's relevant to your topic, you can actually plug into your page at this point and build out that additional information. And here you can add other sites that are related. And then down here is where you can add that connected topics. So let's say that this company is, works on drones. You'll see it'll pop up the topic right there, and you can add that topic. You can add a description for it. What did we say that was? RGC, and update it, and it builds that connection. So the AI basically takes whatever the knowledge manager is doing here and pulls that in and into the rules and all to generate relationships between the different topics. So just a quick look at that topic center, essentially. So, it usually, one of the things that I found is in a big environment, it can take 10 to 14 days to go through and index everything and build out all of your topics. So if you're planning something, make sure or if you're doing that type of project, make sure you plan time that it's going to take a while for the AI to go through and build all those relationships and, put all those topics together before you'll even start seeing them in here. Now, it does work through it, so it may be a few days, or it may be, longer before you start seeing those topics. But in the demo environment, it took about 24 hours for it to even show the topics the first time. The other thing that I noticed about it is when you confirm a topic, and even when you publish it here, so now I've finished that topic and I'm going to publish it. If I go back into my topic center, that topic is still going to remain under the confirmed. And it seems to take about 24 hours before eventually it does get moved over to a published topic. So whatever's happening on the back end is doing that. But from here, you can also view your topic pages for, the published actual topics. So that's kind of a high level on the topic center. And so I have a couple other things. Are there any other questions about that in there? Okay. The AI will build out, but you will still need to have users designated to either review or approve, or will you invite SMEs? Basically, you're going to invite the SMEs to act as the knowledge managers. And you have a lot of capability in terms of inside this gets set up in the admin center under setup. And when you set it up, you can actually select which sites to pull into that. You can define who the administrators or knowledge managers are, and as part of that initial setup. And the initial setup only takes a couple minutes, but as a recommendation, we recommend it to let it go through and index all of the content. But then you can restrict it down to, if you only want certain users administering that content, you can do that through that setup.
Hey, Russ.
Yes.
Yeah, and just to kind of follow up on, because Rachel had that question about curating topics, it's important to remember, while AI is doing the bulk of the work here, we still would recommend that, you want to have human eyeballs on stuff. Yeah, as new topics, that's exactly what I was getting to. So once it goes out, like I'll use our corporate instance, right? It ran out, and I was identified on the suggested people at the top by the AI. So the people who actually are running topics, they delegated and invited me to the topics page that was created, HLS for HLS blog. And now I administer that page. So, I get notified if there's updates suggested. But I am now the owner of that. It's delegated that out. They still have ultimate ownership, but that means one central group is doing more of the handoff versus, having to curate everything themselves. But they can then distribute out that SME access and review and approval, which is really what you want. And yes, as new topics surface, you can continue to do that. We don't just make it available. Stuff isn't just auto-published. But the last thing is also, it is SharePoint site, right? So it's SharePoint pages getting generated. And, there's still control over that. There's still who has access, who's even licensed to see or work with any of this. That's all there.
Yeah. And this is the setup screen inside of the admin. So,
yep.
You can define what sites are used as part of the topic discovery. So if you want to restrict that down, you can. You can exclude topics. If you have topics that are, confidential information, you can basically exclude any of those topics. You can define who sees topics across the organization. Here's the permissions, who can create and edit topics, who can manage topics. And then lastly is the setup of the center, the topic center, and it prompts you for this. But, what do you want the name of it, and where do you want it located within your architecture so that you can set that up. So, you got a lot of flexibility there to define what's right for your organization. So I think, Mike, you did such a good job covering so much of the other stuff. Not sure that I have much else to add at this point. This is Connections Inside. This is that app bar and all that you get inside of Teams now, so that you can see that. Mike mentioned about down here on the left, you get the Insights app, which comes up, and you can see how plain this actually is in here. But you can do, you can set this up so that it prompts you for doing things like praising employees, taking a break. I think this is cool that where this goes through and it, take a deep breath, Russ, take a deep breath. And, so, 1 minute a day or whatever you want to do with that, how are you feeling? You can set that up. And then under the settings over here, you have, how often do you want to do this? And, what's your work schedule look like? What's your timing schedule? So you have the capability to configure what your work week is, what your virtual commute is, when do you want to start that virtual commute? How often do you want to do that reflection and then deep breathing, as well as how often do you want a reminder to basically praise somebody on your team? You can define all of that inside of the Insights app for Teams. So couple things there. The other thing is the protected time. You can do that here and just say, as soon as you say, book a time, it basically shows up on your calendar then. So that was for tomorrow. I think I put that. So here's the focus time that it booked in for me right away there. So a couple things there. Everybody should be seeing that demo Visa topics. So I'm going to just kind of jump on to the next one. We talked about topics and did demo insights. All right. So, and Mike touched a little bit on this, but employees spend about an hour a day or 7 weeks a year searching or recreating information. And, if you think about it from a business case, what's that translate to in terms of dollars for your average company? Just a quick calculation of 280 hours, for at $40 an hour as an average burden cost for a company that has 3,000 associates, that translates into $11,200 per employee that they have the potential to save, as well as across the entire 3,000 employees, you got $33,600,000 in potential savings in a year. Now, that's a small example of what this could potentially relate to in terms of company savings. Now put it into a company that's got 70 or 100,000 employees and think about the potential savings and all there. So that's a little bit of the problem that's there, and then just from a business case perspective, some of the stuff is SharePoint and all as part of it, but you've got employee onboarding and offboarding that can be a business case. Legal contract management. I've seen one of the things that I saw with a demo with it's actually SharePoint Syntax, which is the AI engine that sits under Viva Topics, by the way, that where you can create the rules inside of that engine that where contracts of certain values and who has to apply them. So where we did that, approve them. In the past, we had done that all inside of like Power Automate, SharePoint Syntax, and will give you that capability to define a model for legal contracts. And then based on its interpretation of the contract and the dollar value of it, it'll dynamically define the approval process for who has to approve it. So, just one example of it, but, other types of intellectual property, SOX compliance, supplier integration, there's just a lot of different ways to basically use both the combination of the SharePoint Modern Experience environment, as well as the Viva and Microsoft 365 platform to justify doing a, like a proof of concept with this. Other things that I found is companies that do mergers and acquisitions or are involved in mergers and acquisitions are a great fit for this type of a solution, because it helps them build knowledge and bring those multiple companies together. Last year, and this was before Viva, I was involved with a company that they had actually acquired 7 different companies and were basically merging everything down. Well, nobody knew who to talk to about what, and topics and some of the other Viva connections functionality basically would allow them to bring all, to know who to contact, what the topics were, the specific areas of expertise, who to contact. You can do all of that with us. And, these are just some of the things that you can look at in terms of building that business case if you're dealing with a company that's doing a merger. So some tips, things that you can start doing today is, if you're not on SharePoint Modern today, get there. Enable your global navigation and your app bar in your environment. They're going to be required for Viva Connections. Define a proof of concept for all of this. It doesn't need to be the entire company. You can take a small business unit and start a proof of concept with them, and use the policies inside of Teams to control who can see that Viva functionality. So you don't have to worry about licensing either. If you use topics as an example, $5 per user per month. Well, maybe not everybody needs access to topics, but you've got one key knowledge management area that does need access to it. You can do your POC with just that group and license just those users, as opposed to worry about licensing the entire company. Information architecture is very important. So, the more well-defined your information architecture is, the better the results that you're going to get from your topics and the AI engine, essentially. So, doing a review of the existing information architecture is something that we found is important. You'll get less garbage, essentially, if you've got a good structure there. Another thing is how content gets curated. In a lot of big companies, they may have knowledge managers or experts that have time to do this. But in other companies, they may not. You may have the expert there in it, but they might not have the sufficient time to basically go through and manage the content and all. So there are third-party curation services that you can take advantage of to help you get additional resources to help curate some of that content. Mike talked a lot about the dashboard customization, but personalization, content targeting, adaptive cards, get started with building those, because they're going to basically transition into as tiles inside of Viva, and start working with your My Analytics and Workplace Analytics and as a way to get started. And with that, I'm going to basically close out and just say thank you all for joining us today. Mike, thank you for joining and delivering such great information. It's always good to
thank you.
Have that conversation. SharePoint Hub site.